Free Willy. Like it isn't this just perfectly innocent film that I remember. There's some traumatic things, I think. And again, I'm not saying don't watch the movie or don't let your kids watch the movie. I just think it's important to know these things going in, and that as parents, sometimes we just remember things differently. Like when my dad was like, "Oh, you can watch Stripes. Rated R back then isn't the same as rated R now." And then in the first like 5 minutes of Stripes, is the first inappropriate scene I'd ever seen as a 13-year-old kid. So welcome to another episode of Is This for Kids? I am Jonathan Bearded Blevins.
I am Katie, MrsRuvi.
You are looking very 90s today.
I almost said Katie, MrsRuvi if you're nasty, but then I wasn't sure if anybody would catch it.
I don't think many would.
It's a Janet Jackson from the 90s reference.
Oh, yes.
Janet Miss Jackson if you're nasty.
Yeah, I thought about dressing up for the 90s version of what we're talking about today, ITFK, and just doing one of these. Thoughts?
Well, can I tell you? I came in this outfit ready to do our 90s throwback episode, and you were like, man, you really committed to this. I should do this with my hat. And I was like, this is actually an outfit I wore just the other day.
Oh, really?
I literally would wear this now.
But it is for sure a 90s thing.
I mean, TLC is a 90s thing.
The hair is a 90s thing. The earrings are a 90s thing.
I've just never moved on past, like, the very high floofy ponytail. Like, you're going to catch me do this a bunch. And then I just like hoop earrings.
Okay, so again, cool. All of those things are great.
Yeah.
Okay, but like that's for sure 90s.
Yeah.
It would have been impossible for me not to say something about it during this episode where we talk about Free Willy and heavyweights.
But I want to make it known. This is not a costume. This is a lifestyle. Okay.
Understood?
Yeah.
Yep. So is what I'm wearing.
Katie just hit the wall. She
So
never had it all.
Oh, keep going.
1 Prozac a day. Husband's a CPA, but he's not. And I don't take Prozac.
Husband's a CP. That
one?
one?
That's 1985.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Bowling for Soup?
Yeah.
I have to ask you this, okay?
Sure.
Is there a movie that you can think of where you're like, this is why we started Is This for Kids? A movie where you're like, either one you grew up with watching and you watch it again, you're like, whoa, I can't believe I missed that. Mm-hmm. Or one now where you've seen it and you're kind of like, whoa, kids shouldn't watch this.
Every Mel Brooks movie ever.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I didn't realize kids were watching Mel Brooks movies.
I was as a kid in the 90s. Like my favorite movie for most of my childhood was Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Okay.
We've talked about this on the podcast before, but like we had the same experience. My husband and I were like, yeah, let's watch Spaceballs with our kids. And like I saw Spaceballs when my parents were still married, okay? And they got divorced when I was in first grade. So I must have been 6 when I saw Spaceballs, and I thought it was the funniest movie, and so we rewatched it with our kids. I was like, oh, this is a lot of swears and also a lot of sex jokes. And all I remembered from being a kid was like when the alien busts out of his stomach, like the scene in Aliens, it's a parody, and like does a dance with a top hat. I thought it was great.
Wow.
It's a great movie.
So for me, it was Free Willy. And it's not, Free Willy's not crazy. We're going to talk about Free Willy today and then heavyweights as well a little bit later. But Jody and I one night, it's the kind of the genesis of this podcast was actually like from this situation where Jody and I are thinking of what movie should we watch with the kids. Let's like watch a classic that was really good, but like not a cartoon because they're getting a little older. And so we're like, Free Willy.
Yeah.
It's a movie about saving a whale. Like what could possibly be wrong or weird or traumatic about this movie? And I hadn't seen it since I was a kid. Neither had Jody. And we're like, let's do it. And my kids are 9, 8, or 9, 7, and 4.
Yeah.
Gosh, they keep getting old, and I keep forgetting their birthdays and their ages.
Did you know that it's just going to keep happening?
I don't like it.
Yeah, you gotta. The alternative is murder them.
The days are long and the years are short.
That is what they say.
That's what I've experienced so far. Trying to spend more time with the kiddos.
I don't think you should murder your kids. I just realized how dark that sounded. No, like when you get older, people are like, you're getting older. You're like, well, it's better than the alternative, which is death.
Which is not.
And so, anyway, I'd like to back completely off of that comment.
Yeah, that's okay.
Do you ever say things that you're like,
back up the boat, just like they did for Free Willy?
Yeah. When you're a parent, though, oftentimes you're going to find yourself having said something completely stupid, and you really have to give yourself the grace to be able to say, like, I don't even agree with myself there. I would like to take that back. Just for the rest of your life, parents, reserve the right to say, you know what? I shouldn't have said that. That was wrong. Let me back that off. And it teaches your kids to do the same.
That's actually genius.
I know.
You should put that on Twitter.
Okay.
You did already.
No, I didn't.
He said something similar recently, and it was really nice.
Well, yeah, it was about, like, you can think your thoughts out loud. That's okay. That's more like just, like, processing stuff, though. But, like, all the time as a parent. Yeah.
So we're watching Free Willy, okay?
So
We're going to talk about
much.
Free Willy today. And there's just some things that you need to know about it because I was shocked multiple times while I was watching this movie with my kids. And again, my kids are young and they're, my middle especially is a little sensitive at times to things that can be extra sad or something. And so I just didn't remember any of the actual plot from Free Willy other than that there was a kid who liked a whale who wanted to save the whale.
Yep, that was what I remembered.
That's all I remember. But it's way deeper than that. So it follows this character, Jesse, who's 12 years old. The movie actually starts out with him and a bunch of other people his age, robbing and stealing and committing multiple crimes. Oh, they're stealing food off of restaurants. Why are you looking like that? That's not robbing?
Okay, when I was a kid, I interpreted that as those being bad kids who steal things from people and lie to people. Now that I'm an adult, having rewatched that, I was like, those are homeless children trying to survive.
For sure. But they shouldn't have to do that. I agree.
Yeah.
But you also can't do that.
In my opinion, in my faith tradition or whatever, it's not stealing if you need it to eat. That's not stealing. That's rightfully yours. Eat that. That food is yours. You're starving. You're on the street. Happy birthday. But anyway, continue.
That's fine with me. Here's the deal. You have already just started the kid conversation with my kids.
Exactly.
Because there you go. It starts that way. They're taking food off of tables. They're breaking and entering, all kinds of stuff. And you're just I'm like, what is this? My kids have never seen crimes. Maybe it's not a crime.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Are crimes for kids?
Some crimes are for kids.
And maybe these ones are the ones. So it starts off like that. This kid then, he's abandoned by his family. So he gets these really great foster parents who, for all intents and purposes, look like they want to be his parents forever. It doesn't seem like it's a temporary situation. Mm-hmm. He obviously has a tongue one on his life. And so he lashes out a lot. Breaks a lot of rules, gets assigned to go help clean and be around this whale. He ends up really developing a friendship with this whale, and then eventually wants to free him when the bad guys are trying to kill the whale for insurance money.
Right. When I rewatched the movie, I was like, wait a minute, this is an insurance scam?
Yeah.
I do not remember the insurance scam element of it. But then now that I rewatched it, I was like, oh yeah, that's why they had to free Willy.
Yeah.
Wild.
So I remember being a kid, and that's what the movie's about. I remember being a kid and thinking, I remember looking at these movies and being like, I didn't know that was a thing. So my parents were both together. I was kind of young, I think, when this movie came out. So, I hadn't experienced a lot of life. I did not know that abandoning your kid was something that people did. I did not know. My kids also did not know that was something that would happen. So in the very beginning, when this kid is angry and being super rude to his new foster parents, which is totally acceptable and makes complete sense, my kids are kind of like, what the heck is wrong with this guy? And I'm like, oh yeah, pause. Sometimes people don't have parents.
Yeah.
Sometimes their parents are really broken. And so it's this whole thing. There's a moment in the movie though, where the counselor, who is one of the best characters in the movie, he works with assigning him to his foster parents. He's tried to help him a lot in the past before, you can tell from the relationship. And then there's a point where he's trying to convince Jesse to start being a good kid and accept the love his foster parents are trying to give. And then in order to try to get him to do that, he's like, your mom didn't even turn around and look in the mirror when she left you. And my son just who would say that?
Yeah.
And who would say that? That's not a great thing to say as a counselor, right?
I've never
You don't get to say
been
that.
to counselor school, but it doesn't strike me as the kind of thing you would want to say.
So
Yeah.
Free Willy, it isn't this just perfectly innocent film that I remember. There's some traumatic things, I think. And again, I'm not saying don't watch the movie or don't let your kids watch the movie. I just think it's important to know these things going in, and that as parents, sometimes we just remember things differently. Like when my dad was like, oh, you can watch Stripes. Rated R back then isn't the same as rated R now. And then in the first 5 minutes of Stripes, is the first inappropriate scene I'd ever seen as a 13-year-old kid. So very interesting. I think if you're going to watch Free Willy with your kids, just have a conversation about parenting, about abandonment, about foster care, about adoption, about, all those things so that they're prepared going in.
Yeah, for me, I don't think anybody's really at this time of our life. For me, I never really had a strong connection to Free Willy, so there was no chance I was going to be like, kids, let's watch Free Willy. But I might have if somebody had told me when your kid encounters a person going through a hard time that's acting out, this might be a good movie to watch with them. I'm looking at it not have the conversation first, but when it comes up, maybe this is a movie to use as a teaching moment. My kids have had, for example, one of my children, and I'm not going to give names or anything because I don't want to out anybody here, but they were going to school with someone whose parents were going through a divorce. And I knew that the kid's parents were going through divorce, but it wasn't widely known. The kid hadn't told anybody yet. So my kid didn't know that. And my kid kept coming home and saying, you know, make up a name, Jimmy keeps lying about having brand new, I don't know, Vapor Max shoes. Just this is not the actual scenario, but something very similar. Sure. Jimmy keeps lying about having Vapor Max shoes. We all know he doesn't have them. He's saying he does. He won't show us pictures. When he does show pictures, it's clear that he like took them off the internet. Like they're doing this weird like sleuth thing where they want to prove that Jimmy's wrong. And I'm over here going, Jimmy's life is falling apart right now. Like this kid just wants to be able to talk about something normal and has nothing to talk about. So like, and I've had to have that conversation with that kid. Like, hey, Jimmy's life is, you know, in flux right now. You don't know what's going on in Jimmy's home. You don't understand Jimmy's life. It's really important for your kids to be able to empathize with people even past their bad behavior, because even your kids, my kids, your kids, everybody's kids at some point are going to behave poorly because they're uncomfortable, because their grades are bad, because they're worried that their mom doesn't love them anymore, because their parents are getting divorced, because their grandpa died. Like there's so many reasons why kids act out. So this might be a great movie to come around and be like, look, when I was a kid, I thought Jesse was a bad kid. It didn't even occur to me that he was going through something.
Sure.
And now as an adult, I'm like, that kid's not a bad kid at all. That kid's a kid who needs a hug.
Yeah.
And for his dad, his foster dad, to not say, "We're not buying, this is a lease." That was the worst line in the whole movie.
He did say that.
This is a lease. I ain't buying yet.
That was a whole thing too of like a stereotypical dad in the 90s.
Yeah,
right, where it's like, oh, this is mom's charity project.
Yes.
I'm not so bought in yet. Like that's what dads were back then, which it wasn't. So it's interesting to me that
I don't know why that's because like this is around the same time period as Mrs. Doubtfire, and we talked about how like that was absolutely a difference in how dads were being shown. But yeah, also this was the first time I ever experienced Michael Madsen, the actor who plays the dad, the foster dad. And so for the rest of my life, I associated with him as the dad in Free Willy. So Reservoir Dogs was weird for me. Just real weird.
I didn't even make that connection.
Oh
I bet you're shocked.
I was like, well, what is Free Willy's dad doing? It was really weird for me.
I think that we need to come up with some type of thing where we talk about these 90s movies and figure, like, I don't know, semi-regularly, maybe once every other month or something. But I wonder how many more movies out there are like this. I think of Angels in the Outfield, if you remember that, which, by the way, just awesome movie.
Joseph
like I loved
Gordon-Levitt.
it growing up. Haven't seen it in forever, so I'm sure I'll be shocked. But there's for sure a scene where I'm pretty sure one of the dads who's like left his kid says, "We'll be a family again when the Angels win the pennant." Like,
that's the premise of the movie.
What?
Yeah.
Like
how could you?
Yeah, like if I showed my kids that movie, they'd be like, "Who would say that?"
Yeah, I think that this was the 90s attempt to like start representation by showing like different families, the way that like some people's families are different than yours, and they were trying to do it. But man, were they bad at it.
Yeah.
Like, good try, guys, but yeesh.
Yeah, 100%.
Yikes.
So
like,
Free Willy, for me, I
not
think
affirming.
I love your advice of like using it as a way to have a good conversation with your kids who might be going through something or wondering why other people are going through something. That's really good. I don't think the movie is like, I'm not saying don't watch it, but just be aware and have those conversations with your kids. There's actually like almost no language, no drinking, no drugs.
There's a kid who smokes a cigarette and they vandalize a whale tank.
Yeah.
That's pretty much, and he breaks a window on purpose.
Yeah. Which like my kids were like, wow, who would do that? That's wild.
How do you even replace a window that big?
Yeah.
That's a $50,000 window. Yeah.
So I would just, not a lot of violence. So I would just say, 7 or 8 years old, but just have good conversations with your kids about it.
I would say you're probably fine to watch it at any age. That if they're too young, it's going to go over their head, and they're probably going to be bored if they're little. But I don't think there's anything inappropriate in there. But I think we'd be remiss if we don't mention the animal rights aspect of it.
Oh, sure.
Halfway through this, I went and Googled what happened to that whale.
What happened to Willy?
Yeah, Keiko was his real name, the whale. So in case you're curious, Keiko was housed at a aquarium type thing in Mexico City. That's where they filmed it. But he was actually kidnapped in the same way that Willy was in the movie, that like fishermen just grabbed him off the coast of Norway and dragged him in to be a show whale when he was little. And so yada yada yada. After the movie comes out, all of these people were like, "Oh no, we need to actually free Keiko. Like, this is crazy town. This whale shouldn't be in there." And so, multiple years and processes later, I think the movie came out in 95 or 96. By 2002, they had moved him back to the shores of Norway where he was from, and they had attempted to locate his original pod, but like, how would you ever know?
Yeah.
So they put him in a bay, and he was so used to people that like he was constantly along the shoreline. He almost never went out into the open ocean.
Wow.
He was like waving at the people, doing tricks in the ocean, like, and they had to keep a handler with him at all times in the bay because he just was not capable of going back on his own. And then eventually, like within a year of being released into the ocean, died of pneumonia.
Oh, poor dude.
Yeah, so they buried him under cover of darkness so that it wouldn't draw a media circus.
Wow.
And that was how that went down.
That's not the same story of that documentary, is it?
I think Blackfish was about SeaWorld.
Why do I feel like the name was Keiko in that too?
They might have mentioned him because he was a big deal. But
Okay.
yeah, so I think Blackfish...
Big deal. Nice one.
But yeah, it was
Get it? Whale.
Big. Large. And he's not even the largest kind of whale. Those are actually quite small whales.
Interesting. Well, and aren't they not even whales? They're dolphins.
I don't know.
I'm like 99% sure that an orca is a type of dolphin and not even technically a whale.
Or something like that. I don't know.
We're geniuses.
We don't know anything about anything.
My 9-year-old for sure knows, okay? And so
Yeah.
I can ask him later.
Hey, if they want more of this content, where could they find it?
On Instagram, is this for kids? Or is this for kids.com? And they can give us suggestions. They can give us 5-star reviews on anywhere they listen to podcasts. They can follow us on YouTube where there's great, awesome, beautiful video of us.
I'm not saying that one of our reviews on the Apple podcast says, I hate the female host, she's so annoying, but you should go counteract that one. It would make me feel
Does
better.
it really?
Yeah.
Well, there are way
Hurtful.
more people who are paying for our Patreon.
That's true.
And then leaving negative reviews. So
That's
that means
true.
we're doing something right. You can also check us out and check out our Patreon.
Yeah,
for
there's
some
just
bonus
so
content.
much content out there for parents to go through.
I'm Jonathan Beard of Blevins.
And I'm Katie, MrsRuvi. Let us help you decide.
Is this for kids?